One time in my life I felt that. What was my purpose?
This is a question a lot of us are asking ourselves nowadays, and it is a question that I've been asking myself for about 5 years. And this video is going to give you an answer that is not only rooted in my personal story, but also in neuroscience and philosophy. It's either going to make your life much more easy or more uncomfortable, and you're going to understand by the end of the video exactly why. My goal is not to make you feel good, but to give you an honest answer, an answer that you can actually work with, an answer that will lead you to living a better life and give you more clarity that you so desire to have. I'm going to give you a short form of the answer in just a couple of seconds, but before I do that, I want to address the biggest problem that a lot of us are currently facing. We think that if we just discover the most optimal mental gymnastics, or just keep on asking ourselves the question, what is our purpose, that we're eventually going to figure it out. But that's not the case, and it's a hard realization I had to make for myself over the last 5 years, but at least by now I understand why over the last 5 years I was more stuck than I actually needed to be, and why that will never be the case anymore. And I think this video will do a good job at creating the same realization for you as well. So to be completely honest with you, purpose is not a result of just staying in your room surrounded by 4 walls and asking yourself the question, what is my purpose? But rather a result of positive feedback, either from other people, from God, or from yourself. To create a bridge between how we view purpose today and how philosophy viewed it back then, we have to understand or define what purpose even means for us. Is it the highest state of life we can achieve? I would say yes, I think you would say yes. And that's very interesting, because if we see it this way, we come to the conclusion that over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle already defined what the highest state of life is. It's called eudaimonia, the highest state of human flourishing, and we can best define it as a rational activity of the soul in accord with virtue. What this best describes is a life that is well lived, a life where one is able to reach or maximize their potential. And not just by being happy. This is a big mistake we make nowadays. We associate the term eudaimonia with happiness, but nowadays we associate happiness rather with pleasure and hedonism. That is not how Aristotle back then, 2,000 years ago, viewed happiness. But I digress. The way how to achieve this state is through virtuous behavior. And there are multiple ways how to do this. And already back then it became clear that only thinking about what you can do is not enough. You actually have to apply the knowledge that you have into practical reality. Aristotle back then described this best with the term phronesis. The translation is practical wisdom. He didn't see human flourishing as something that you would just understand, something that you would just go through in your head as often as possible, but rather something you actually live through your actions, through your behavior. So yes, contemplation, so discussing the meaning of your life in your head and thinking about what best fits to you and who you actually are, is a necessary step to achieving the state. This is also how Aristotle defined it. Contemplation is the highest and most complete form of human activity, but it's not enough. It has to be tied with action. Why is this so important to the thesis that I mentioned earlier, that purpose is a result of positive feedback? You only receive feedback through action, not through doing mental gymnastics. If I'm honest, the short explanation about Aristotle and how he viewed life doesn't really do him justice. So I highly recommend you to either read the books yourselves on Nicomachean Ethics, or to just watch some summaries. Moving away from ancient philosophy and heading towards philosophy from the 19th and 20th century, we have to talk about existentialism, a philosophy that is so similar to Aristotle's beliefs, but yet so different. Famous philosophers from this era were Soren Kierkegaard or Friedrich Nietzsche. These are names you've probably heard before, especially the latter you've heard, either from Jordan Peterson or through Instagram. Stay tuned for the end of this video, because that's where I'm going to mention a quote from Kierkegaard. When it comes to how we define purpose, there is a difference, but also similarity between Aristotle's views and the philosophy of existentialism. The difference is where the purpose comes from and how it is given to you. Aristotle assumed that everything on this planet has meaning. Every being, so every human, every animal, every plant, had a specific, predefined, universal meaning. For the humans, it was to reach the state of eudaimonia. Of course, every human had their own way of flourishing. Aristotle was also aware of that. But essentially, the purpose, the meaning of our life, was something we had to reach, but not something we had to answer. Existentialism views this in a sharp, contrasting way. It is of the opinion that you have no predefined purpose, that you are born with no greater meaning, and that the meaning has to be created through action, so by exposing yourself to reality. And this is also where we come to the similarity, because back then, when we talked about Aristotle, we already defined that not only contemplation is necessary, but also phronesis, practical wisdom, applying what you learned. In existentialism, it's not that that different. You have to find a purpose through action. So not only Aristotle, but also existentialism are of the opinion that you can't be in your head, you have to get out of it and actually act and expose yourself to uncomfortable situations and learn from them in order to receive feedback, in order to receive a sense of meaning. For Aristotle, this was necessary in order to achieve this flourishing state that was already predefined for humans, and for existentialists, this was necessary in order to discover what your purpose even is in the first place. And this is why existentialism is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, because they think that purpose is something that the universe has already given them. But if all of a sudden you have to learn that you actually have no purpose and it's only going to emerge from actually getting outside and doing things, that can be very uncomfortable and very frightening at first. But to be honest, it makes the most sense. And the neuroscience nowadays supports it. To achieve a state in which we feel purposeful, we have to act. But to continuously act, we need motivation, we need a drive. And we will only receive that motivation if dopamine gets released in our brain. And this is where things get really good, because as we know, dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure, but rather of motivation and pursuit. I mean, I made a whole video on the meaning of life and how it is related to dopamine. You can watch it over there. But what this essentially comes down to is that if you have no dopamine release, you have no urge to continue or no motivation to keep on going. If you have no urge to continue, you have no feedback. And if you have no feedback, you really don't have that much meaning and that much purpose. And this is where things get quite difficult, at least for some people, because to be, in quotation marks, eligible for purpose, you have to do a lot of things or engage in specific habits. To be specific, habits that help you to have a more well-regulated nervous system, and I'm going to explain exactly in steps why. You see, dopamine release depends on feedback, positive feedback, either from other people, from God, or from yourself. And the amount of positive feedback that you receive is totally dependent on how skilled you are, how proficient you are in the thing you are doing. And the only way how to become highly skilled and highly proficient is to be flexible and adaptive. I refer to the so-called process of adaptation. It's the cycle of exposure, failure, learning, and reflection. And every cycle you go through eliminates uncertainty, it eliminates question. You raise the probabilities of you becoming more skilled and having more answers to questions that are being asked in the domain that you are active in, but also you reduce the amount of situations in which you risk not receiving positive feedback. And this is where nervous system regulation gets into play, because this whole process of adaptation, exposure, failure, learning, reflecting, when are you more likely going to be able to do that on a sustainable basis? If you have distorted judgments, or if you have a well-regulated mind that allows you to make good decisions, and in cases where you eventually want to give up, tells you to keep on going. You see, a well-regulated nervous system drastically improves the activity of your prefrontal cortex. And what does that lead to? Better judgments. And what do better judgments lead to? Improved commitment. And I'm not now saying that you always have to have a well-regulated mind in order to feel purposeful, but it will drastically, as much as it increases the function of your prefrontal cortex, increase the probability of you being a version of yourself that is able to be highly skilled and receive positive feedback, as we've already discussed in the last minutes. I mean, I could just think about my personal story. In 2020, the last time where I actually felt purposeful, you know, back then we had COVID and we had a lot of free time, school was not that much of a thing, and I remember going biking, mountain biking outside with my friends, and we had a bike park that was like 10 minutes away. So we went there almost every day. We built jumps, we rode them, we tested them, and in that year I got better and better in biking. I mean, I can insert some clips in here. I don't know what's gonna pop up, but I received a lot of positive feedback, not only from myself, by being able to see that I was able to do these tricks and make progress, but also from other people. I remember people just coming to me and saying, "Oh wow, I didn't see you do this trick the last time I saw you." So as you see, that was a lot of positive feedback, and that gave me the motivation to keep on pursuing this activity. I even started to ask myself, do I want to become professional with this sport because it feels purposeful? Is this my purpose, to become a professional mountain biker? And then a couple months later, I had a crash, my bike was broken, school started, the winter season started to come in, and the overall ability to bike and engage in this activity was reduced. And as a result of that, I didn't receive that much positive feedback anymore. To be honest, I didn't receive any feedback anymore, and I didn't feel purposeful anymore. Becoming a professional mountain biker was not my purpose, and I felt very disappointed for like months. And that led to me for 5 years asking myself, what is my goal? What is my meaning? What is my purpose? And only until shortly where I started to do so much deep reflection, remember from back then, Aristotle, contemplation, making sense of life, only until I did that, and where I slowly became more in touch with God, I noticed that something changed. I started to feel happiness and peace for the first time in those 5 years, and it was a result of learning all these skills, all the way from video editing, music production, neuroscience, finance, psychology, and with the help of God, being able to put all of it into a skill. And what was that skill? Creating content, being able to be a voice that is able to answer questions not only with my own experience, but by also doing research and making other people's lives better through my actions. And I mean, to be honest, in the beginning, when I was making my first YouTube videos, it was pretty difficult because they didn't get that much positive feedback, or they didn't, with positive feedback here, I mean views and interaction. I mean, some videos only got 30 views, 40 views, 50 views. And even though I already was sure that this is something I want to do, I did not feel that purposeful yet. And I had a lot of hard days where I had to ask myself the question, is this really my purpose? Is this something meaningful? And then shortly after, I had a video that blew up. It got 60,000 views, the video that I already recommended a couple minutes ago. And that's where I started to read all these comments that said that they were really grateful for me making this video, and people were just writing how they learn things. And that's where I started to receive a huge wave of positive feedback. And that's what led me to actually coming to that realization, fuck, this is what I want to do. And this perfectly shows how even though I managed to discover what I wanted to do in my head a couple months ago, it was not enough. I needed the feedback from making videos and from people actually commenting under those videos. And only since then am I sure that this is something I actually want to do. And only since then has the self-doubt been reduced. And this is also a strong reason why I think a lot of people struggle to find their purpose nowadays. Just imagine, see purpose as a game. And actually feeling purposeful is level 11, and level 1 to 10 are all the steps I just mentioned earlier. So engaging in the habits that allow you to have a well-regulated nervous system, actually exposing yourself to new situations, learning from those situations, reflecting on them, and as a result of that, becoming highly skilled, and as a result of becoming highly skilled, receiving a lot of positive feedback. Those are the levels 1 to 10. Most people want to be at level 11 without doing levels 1 to 10. They want to have this feeling of meaning and purpose before even going through the process of making themselves, I say it again in quotation marks, eligible for it. But this is now where we have to make an objection, because a lot of people are probably now asking themselves, but what if not everybody is eligible for purpose because people simply do not have that flexibility or do not live in an environment that allows them to be flexible to engage in these levels 1 to 10? And to be honest, on this planet, a lot of people are part of that cohort. You see, this is also where it gets a little bit brutal, but there are a lot of people who are not in the state that allows them, or at least not in the optimal state that allows them to feel purpose. This is mainly because they either live in a country that is corrupt or live in an environment that does not allow them to participate in the game. It's sad because there are so many systems out there that do not prioritize human flourishing. Instead, we focus on materialism, achieving money and status. And yes, back then already, Aristotle defined money and status as valuable tools to come closer towards the state of human flourishing, but not as the end goal. And yet in society, in so many systems, status and materialism is the end goal. But I think deep down all of us, we just want to have purpose and feel good. But if the incentives of the current systems that we have in place do not support the idea of human flourishing, a lot of us are screwed and have to suffer. But here's where the good news for the majority of you arrives. You see, the main inhibitor for a lot of people is time, flexibility. But for most of you, there is enough time. You guys have at least an hour a day to engage in exercise or meditation or engaging with other people or cognitive challenges. You see, a lot of people are excluded from the game of finding purpose through a higher power, a power that they cannot control. But in Western civilizations and a lot of more well-developed countries, people exclude themselves through their own behavior. So many of us are addicted to social media, to doom scrolling, of just pointlessly looking at videos we don't even know why we're looking at them in the first place. And every single one of us who's involved in this process has at least a little bit of time to replace the bad habit with some good habit that is contributive to nervous system regulation. So if you're somebody who just wanted to go on Instagram or on TikTok to scroll, instead, go on a language app, go on a walk in nature outside, call a friend, or talk to them in person. And if you plan to go to bed late because you want to watch a Netflix episode, go to bed early, get enough sleep. Your nervous system will thank you. Anyway, that leads you to the end of this video. By now you should understand that what your purpose ends up being is totally dependent on the life you choose to live, the lessons you end up learning from it, and the positive effect those lessons have on improving your and/or other people's lives. By now you should also understand that the concept of this video doesn't support one specific purpose, but your ability to feel purposeful in one thing and then perhaps when you reach a different chapter in your life, to feel purposeful in another thing. The purpose you have is totally dependent on the positive feedback that you receive in that moment. This means that in the one moment, like in my example, I can feel purposeful as a mountain biker and want to become professional, and now I feel purposeful as a YouTuber. And fuck, hey, in the future, when I become a dad, I'm gonna feel purposeful as a dad. And the whole thing, the whole story just goes on and on. This is why I believe that deep down, we do not have an assigned purpose. Yes, I do think that God has prescribed us with a role to learn and adapt and help other people on this planet, but everybody can do that through their own different way. And this is why you should stop asking questions and start acting, because a lot of those questions you have will be answered through action. And yes, as we've previously discussed, asking questions is necessary. Contemplation is a crucial step to achieving this flourishing state. But it is not everything, and often when we do too much of it, it becomes more hurtful than helpful. And to be honest, I think nowadays so many of us are stuck in our heads, just overthinking and ruminating. We're more likely to become depressed than feel meaning and purpose. And because I mentioned in the philosophy part of this video that I was going to mention a quote from Kierkegaard, that's how I'm going to end this video. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And with that, see you in the next one.